Okay, so I'll just jump right into the first question. So, Lucia, thank you for taking my call. I just wanted to kind of ask, how long have you been working at Interstate, and can you tell me a little bit about kind of your professional journey and how you landed here?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have actually been working at Interstate approaching now on 7 years. My anniversary is
Uh,
actually coming up in June.
awesome.
I
Congrats.
started it, thank you so much. I started back in peak season, actually, 2018. And so started out as the international commercial freight forwarder and then grew into the government freight forwarder and then the team lead and then became the manager of our entire global relocations group to include both domestic, non-military, and military divisions within the Interstate company. So grew rather quickly. The department
I
grew
was gonna
rather
say,
quickly, and as a result of that growth, from a volume perspective, it allowed our team to grow rather quickly. So from a three-person show, we grew to about 22 people, kind of coming in and out. And so I've had the blessing of being able to manage a vast majority of that group, who just keeps the show running every single day. So definitely
yeah,
something that has been both a challenge but also a blessing, keeps me busy, which I thoroughly enjoy. Prior to Interstate, I my expertise is predominantly on the international freight forwarding side. I actually started as a summer admin back in 2009 for another TSP in the DMV area, and started out as summer help. And they liked me, and so they kept me to make me full time, and then grew into an admin long term, then to a COD freight forwarder, and then grew into an actual account specialist. I was actually on site for a number of clients that I worked with, to include like IDB, the Australian Embassy. And so, yeah, that's what kind of got me here.
wow,
Just that vast experience of just kind of working for a number of different companies and having the exposures to a variety of clients.
that's
So,
awesome. Yeah, and it
15
sounds
years
like
in.
that's great. Yeah. And it sounds like you've been in the industry for a very long time and
Yes.
you've really excelled in your role. We're really focusing on safety here at Interstate, and we've noticed that you've recently gotten some new certifications. So we'd love if you could tell us about that and kind of what those cover and enable you to do here at Interstate.
Yeah, so my interest in certifications has always been a high one. I'm very, I guess, educationally centric. I like the school setting, and so being with on the work side and as a mom of four, not really in a position to necessarily go back to school full time, but the certs allow me that opportunity to kind of get my hands wet and be nose in a book, and taking notes and things like that, which has always been something that I've always leaned towards. So from a cert perspective, I came to the company already with a number of certifications under my belt, and the opportunity presented itself about 3 years ago to obtain a lithium battery training certificate, because Department of Transportation was now implementing some regulations that they had always had in place, but never really enforced. And they had announced that they were going to begin that enforcement. And as part of that enforcement was a rule for people who managed the movement of freight, needing to get just a knowledge base of lithium ion battery movement, both
Sure.
domestically and internationally. So it actually started there a couple years ago, and I got that training, and was certified on regulated and non-regulated lithium ion batteries. And so received that training just for lithium ion battery. And after that, we started getting some opportunities for some non-household goods shipments. And so an opportunity had presented itself, which our team is managing alongside our Vice President, Ruth Moritz, and another opportunity presented itself that would allow us potentially the chance to bid and participate in the movement of hazardous goods. And so I decided to take that upon myself as the manager of the department to then do some additional research, and get certified on the hazardous side of the house. So in case that business began to trickle in as a result of that lead, we would have the necessary certifications for compliance
Yeah,
purposes, as
you'd be
well
ready.
as exactly to be able to assist and offer any advice that is needed, to whomever is going to be coordinating those moves within our organization.
That's excellent. Yeah. I wanted to also ask, so like for organizations that are moving hazardous materials, what are some kind of risks or challenges associated with that?
Yeah, so from a hazardous material perspective, just by virtue of having to touch or participate in a leg of a move that is a hazardous shipment. There are a number of risks, right? You have, of course, your first set of risks, which is your safety, right? You can have your general spill, leaks, fires, things like that. Exposures, right? Risks that are affiliated to just the exposure of whatever the contents is that you're moving. Then, of course, the secondary things, right? You have your environmental impact. If I'm moving something that could potentially impact the air or the water that I'm moving the contents along, those are things that we have to now be mindful of because that limits my ability of the contents of what I can ship and the quantity of what I can ship and how I can ship it. Then, of course, there's the regulatory compliance component, right, which is a risk for the company itself, because if we move something without the necessary authorities or compliance requirements in place, then I put the company at risk, right? If I'm not mitigating those components. So I want to make sure that I'm complying by Department of Transportation and EPA and OSHA and the international regulating entities like IMDG and IATA, so that we as a company don't get deemed for something that is avoidable. And then, of course, the emergency response, right? I want to make sure that I'm able to coordinate accordingly with the people who are going to be touching a particular shipment and offer them the necessary instructions so that they're managing my shipment in a safe manner. And then, of course,
Absolutely.
it's always the security threats, right? And that's just with regards to it being potentially a target, or there's a risk of the theft component. And so I want to make sure that I'm aware of what needs to be put in place so that those items or the contents that of what I'm moving is not misused or misplaced during the process of the moving.
On safety and kind of how we differ as a company.
Interstate is always open to the suggestions of their employees. And so that's one way that we kind of spearhead our safety mechanisms, right? We also have a safety and compliance officer. He's a director who works for our organization, and Anthony, and he also does his fair share of research and work to ensure Interstate's compliance with the safety requirements of just the overall move industry, which is a great thing. From an international perspective, though, we a lot of that, the brunt of that work sits with both myself and Ruth, right? Ruth as the business unit leader and myself as the manager. As we sit in a position of if we think of the move industry as an orchestra, the freight forwarder sits in a seat as the orchestra leader, right? So we're the conductor, and we're conducting all of the moving parts of the shipment. And so although we are working with quality providers who we know meet certain certification and regulatory requirements, it's also our responsibility to also hold them accountable and compliant. And the only way to do that is to be knowledgeable in our own rights, so that we can apply that across all legs of a certain move. And so we absolutely celebrate those little milestones. So like one of the things that Anthony always does is once a month we celebrate our safety milestones. If we have a month where there have been no operational accidents, right, whether it be a driver or local warehouse, then we celebrate those little wins. Our compliance and point system with Department of Transportation, we celebrate those, and they're always quick to identify and highlight a driver or a local operations team member who has exceeded the standard or who has set the tone and the bar for other people to meet. And so like we do that through our year-end gala. We do an award ceremony every year. And that's one of the awards that actually goes out is with regards to the safety and whether or not the drivers are meeting those safeties. And we give out a number of awards for those drivers that drive the safest, meaning no tickets, meaning no speeding, meaning no claims. We highlight all of that as an organization, which I think is absolutely great. And then, of course, we're constantly looking at our regulations. We're looking at the rules that we put into place across our company in general, based off the day-to-day operation, as well as, overseas when we are coordinating those freight forwarding components. We're constantly just taking a look at those and mitigating accordingly. And it really is kind of like the Constitution. It's a living document. When we know that there's a change somewhere within our process or in our program as a move industry, we make that change accordingly. And so it's something that we definitely pay attention to on a day-to-day basis.
That's awesome. And I love your analogy about the orchestra, everyone working together and with the conductor. That's fantastic. One other thing I wanted to ask you about is how long would it take for some of these certifications for you to acquire them? What does that kind of look like for you?
Yeah, so from a certification perspective, each certification kind of takes a different amount of time. So luckily for me, the hazardous goods certification that I obtained was not limited to just a specific shipment type. I decided to take and attack all three. So I did both domestic Department of Transportation, I did the air component, which is IATA, and I did IMDG, which is ocean. So I decided to attack all three because we are international. So we do manage all three types of shipments with those three methods of transportation. For me, it took me, I'd say roughly about a month to get that certification, just because the way that that training requires you to be familiar with the regulations, how to locate them within the manuals. So we
Right,
actually
right.
have a big book. If you look at my desk, there's two manuals sitting on my desk that are just for the ocean side, which is IMDG. One
Wow.
book has the rules in it. The other one has a breakdown of all of the classifications, all of the types of codes that exist, all of the packaging requirements, and it's literally like the thick textbook like this. And so that training actually requires you to be able to break down every column of the IMDG. You have to be able to speak to the classifications, the type of hazardous material, what type of packaging is required, what labeling is necessary, what imagery needs to be on it, what does the documentation need to look like, what is the order of the verbiage on that labeling. And so it breaks it down into every single leg very, very specifically. And so the training requires you to have all of that knowledge before you can ever get to the point of taking a test.
Wow.
And so, yeah, so it was very involved. And
It sounds
then
like
on the
it, yeah.
DOT side, you have to get into the CFR 49, and that's where it deep dives into that side because neither regulation has the same requirement. So the format of one may not be the same for the other. And so with the involvement, that's why it took me so long because it literally had me go through every single module. I had to go through every single classification.
Wow.
And one is dependent on the other. So the way that training was set up is you couldn't do the IATA or the IMDG without having the CFR, the domestic side of it first. Because we are a US based company. So, of course, that's the foundation for the other two. And the thought would be is that anything that we are coordinating internationally is going to, in some way, shape, or form, touch the United States or have some type of US influence because we are a US based company. So I have to be mindful of all US regulations because
Absolutely.
I'm USA. So,
Yeah, and that level of detail is super important. So it's
oh,
amazing to hear. I'm
absolutely.
sure it can be overwhelming to have your massive textbook that you're talking about,
Oh,
but
yeah.
that's critical. So
Yeah.
the last thing I want to ask you is, so as a leader, you've obtained a lot of these certifications. Have any of your team members expressed interest in kind of getting certified for those same things, or has that kind of spurred on the team to go that direction?
Yeah, so one of the things that we started off with was that Department of Transportation lithium ion battery training requirement that came out. Um, as much as we could have potentially, I don't want to use the word gotten away with, but we could have justified just the training of one person within our division, right? Especially me as the manager overseeing the full division, right? Being in a consultative position to offer advice and instruction to the team as a team, right? As an operational team. We didn't stop there. Interstate didn't stop there. When I approached my business unit leader, Ruth, and said, hey, I'm going to go ahead and get this training. I think it'd be beneficial for our freight forwarders and our move managers who operationally don't move freight, but are actually signing the shipments to the transportation service providers. I thought it would be beneficial for them to also be aware of the regulation so that they can properly counsel their customers and properly instruct the transportation service providers they're working with outside of just interstate. And
Absolutely.
so that was met with an approval, which was great. And so actually our entire team has lithium ion battery certifications. So they can speak to the DOT regulation. My international side can speak to both the international and the domestic regulation. And my domestic team can also speak to both sides of the house. I thought it'd be best to just make everybody across the board be trained on that front. I do have other team members who have taken it a step further and wanted to go the dangerous goods route. And so we do have some that have that preliminary training in like the IMDG, which is the ocean component. And so slowly but surely the thought is to expand so that the team can get any type of training that is possibly available to them from a shipping perspective. I'm actually in the process of getting my customs import regulation certification, which is just for the rules and regulations that apply for all imported goods, whether they're hazardous or non-hazardous, into the United States. And I'm actually in the process of securing that as we speak. Just to kind of continue that robust growth.
Yeah.
Because the more we know, the better equipped we are to bring business in the building. And as we continue to expand and bring in additional volume, I'd rather have something already under my belt than not have it at all. And it's something we can upsell, right? It's something that our clients don't have to be worried about because we're vetted, and we're knowledgeable. And so we can offer them the necessary advice and not be
Yeah.
dependent on third parties for that information.
That's amazing. And I love the team buy-in there. You've definitely set
Yeah.
some incredible leadership up there to have kind of the whole team have that buy-in. So, Lucia, I think I got everything I needed actually. So we should be golden.
Okay.
So thanks for carving out some
Awesome. Well,
time in
thank
your
you
day
so
for
much,
me.
Ben.
All right. Have a great
Yeah,
day.
no, absolutely. Thank you so much,
All
Sweetie.
right.
You too.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.